Welcome to Bits and Pieces Quilting. Today I am with my mom and we are going to do a trunk show, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm Michelle and today I am with my mom and I am thrilled to be able to present to you a trunk show of mom's quilts. Some of these are ones that I've made and given to her, some of these she has made, and others we have made together and are actually sitting now waiting to be gifted to lucky people. Mom, when do you think you made your first quilt?
I think it was 1980
Okay.
when we went to live amongst the Mennonites in our community north of Waterloo.
Yeah. So mom and dad are from Kitchener-Waterloo, which is in southern Ontario, very close to a large Amish community. And I think we have a photo of that quilt that'll be part of the trunk
Yeah.
show. It's all hand pieced, all hand quilted. Wait until you see it. It's really spectacular. And then some of the latest quilts are just done in the last year or
It would
so.
last 4 years.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a whole range of quilts here. You'll see one of the very first quilts I ever made as a gift for mom in 2002, I think the label says.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover a range of ground in this trunk show. I took the photos on a recent weekend visiting with mom, and so my niece and nephew will feature in holding up those quilts for the photos, and I'm going to just narrate over them and tell you a little bit of something about those quilts. So let's dive in. In putting these quilts to show into some kind of order and to do them the most justice, I thought I should probably start with the oldest one that Mum and I talked about, probably from 1980. Mum hand pieced and hand quilted this beauty. And it's, I'm a little older than 1980, but not by a whole lot. And I remember this quilt as a feature of my childhood. And there are two blocks in particular I want to draw your attention to. The first is the cathedral windows. I love that, made in the traditional way. You can put your finger right into those little slots, and I remember doing that as a child. I've always loved cathedral windows, and you may have seen my easy cathedral windows, but there really is something about that traditional approach. And the other is directly kitty corner to it in the Cubert blocks. I was a child in the 80s. Sorry, I was born in the 70s, child in the 80s, and that just looked like the Cubert video game. So that tumbling block, also a traditional pattern, but my first exposure to it was in a Cubert video game, and I just loved the three-dimensionality of those blocks. And you'll see I also have a video on my channel to make three-dimensional baby's blocks to make a baby quilt. So these old blocks, these old traditional blocks, they come back around again with new approaches and new techniques, but the tradition is still there and that history that we draw from. This is such a spectacular quilt. There's a mariner's compass in here that I have yet to try, but who knows? This will continue to be a source of inspiration, I think. The stitching is beautiful. Mum did a stunning job on this, and it truly is a treasure. And so, in keeping with the first quilts, the older quilts, the oldest quilts, the next one I want to show you is a triple Irish chain. This is one of my very first projects ever, and I made it for mom and dad. I made it, I think, in 2002. So a long time ago for me, quite a while, well, 22 years ago. So that's probably just about the start of my quilting journey. And I still look back at the quilting on this and think, wow, well, not bad, not bad. I would absolutely go back and revisit the borders, which I haven't shown you a great photo of because they're really not worth talking about. There's no quilting in them and they're a little bit wavy, but you know what? It's still with us, it's still being used, it's still being loved, and I love, 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 love the simplicity and the detail in the quilting on this one. The next one I want to show you is another project that Mum hand quilted. This one's also spectacular, but when you get up really, really close to it, you realize that it's actually a cheater quilt. It's a printed panel, but Mum laid it out onto a frame, drew on the alternate designs, and then hand quilted the whole thing. And I'm showing you a photo of the back because as quilters, we always want to take a look at the back, and you can really see the detail of the stitching that Mum put into this in order to get the detail and to make that printed panel pop. I think it's just a spectacular project. And while I don't do a lot with panels or pre-printed panels, this just shows you how really powerful and impactful they can be. And the time and attention here is a little bit mind-blowing, to be honest. Mum also put a lot of time and effort into this one where she has hand stitched, hand cross stitched all of these beautiful double wedding ring blocks. I think that double wedding ring is probably, I don't know if she'd say if it was one of her favorite designs or patterns or not, but I think it's one of those patterns that she's never made but probably always wanted to. But she did do it here in a hand cross-stitched hand embroidered quilt top. This one is a little bit fragile in that there's not a lot of quilting through the entire project. You can see on the borders where she's hand quilted this chain ribbon border around it. But these blocks are really, really beautiful. This one gets displayed more often than it gets used, but it is still also a really beautiful project. Another early project for me are these maple leaves, and I made them for my dad also in 2002, and I made it as a lap quilt. Dad, I always sat in his reclining chair and watched sports on television, and he was always a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so I made this quilt, and Jason came up with the name for it. He suggested that we call it Go Leaves Go, as in the falling fall leaves, but also a slight tribute to Dad's favorite hockey team. So that sat on Dad's chair for the entire time until he passed away in 2023. So he always used that quilt. This purple quilt is another project of Mom's. She made this one herself. It is a basket weave design with some really, really beautiful fabrics. And I don't think, oh wait, no, there is a nice up close photo here of some of just the beautiful light purple florals. And I love, 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 love the green inner border that divides the piano key border from the inside. This, I think, is a fairly simple design, and it's all about color placement and then things cut on point and set on point in order to get that basket weave effect across the entire project. I think it looks spectacular. And because of all those tiny little pieces, it's actually quite dense and heavy. So it's a really nice quilt on a cold, cold day when you want to stay warm. And then the history of bits and pieces goes way back. I've always said that Mum was my inspiration. And from the leftovers of this purple quilt, she has made this other little quilt with the leftover pieces. It's very much a lap quilt, and it just takes those leftover pieces and uses them up to make sure that nothing goes to waste. Mum is also a huge fan of table runners, and she rarely keeps very many for herself. She's probably made hundreds of them, and if you saw my video on Mum's ruler collection, I showed you some of the spiral table runners that she's made. I don't know if she's ever kept any of them for herself, but this is a table runner she has kept. It is so intricately folded. I tried to get a zoomed in image of the two starburst shapes, and it's all made out of folded fabric. And then it has the heat resistant material inside of it, so it can be used actually as a hot plate. And Mum has some Christmas versions of it as well as this really cool Canada Day version of it. And it's amazing to put that onto a holiday table or a festive table. There's space for a little candle in the middle, and then those two hot plates are really, really useful when having a celebratory dinner. It's a very, very cool project. This is a scrappy quilt that I actually made for my grandfather, and when he passed away, it came back to Mum and Dad. and it is based on a Bonnie Hunter pattern. And I love scrappy quilts. If you watch my channel, you know how much I love scrappy quilts. And Bonnie Hunter has some of the best scrappy patterns out there. And so this is a free pattern off of her website. And I think it's still available, in fact. If it is, I'll put a link in the description below after I record this video. But it's a fun, beautiful pattern. And it's a great way to make the most of your scraps. My grandfather used this for many years, and like I said, when he passed away, it came back to my family as a token and a reminder of my grandfather. This quilt was really hard to photograph. It's these beautiful light pale pastel colors, and I think this is probably the one that Mom uses the most. She made this a number of years ago. It is enormous. It's a if it's not a king size, I'd be surprised. It's an enormously generous queen size quilt, probably pushing a king size quilt. And when she asked me to quilt it for her, I just said no. I just said I don't think I can do it. So I turned to a good friend Karin, and she used her long arm machine and did a stunning job. The angle on this is purposefully bad, I guess, because I really wanted to show off the quilting on this. The long arm is just, it's so stunning. And Mom loves this quilt. She uses it for most of the year. And it's the one I really associate with Mom in her bedroom the most often. And it's a stunning project. This is a fun and beautiful little quilt, and if you look really closely, you might be able to tell that it's a disappearing 9-patch, which looks completely different from the K Facet disappearing 9-patch that I made a video on over a year ago. In this case, Mum has set her disappearing 9-patch with some sashing and cornerstones. But if you look closely, you can see that the little tiny squares are all this white cream color to try to tie things together with the sashing and cornerstones. But these soft, subtle greens are just so beautiful. And if you look even closer, you might even think that it's a Christmas quilt. Some of the fabric is really distinctly Christmas, but I love how neutral it can be as well with these beautiful soft greens. Green is my big all-time favorite color, and I love this one that Mom did. So while my favorite color is green, I think Mom's favorite color is probably blue. She's got two colorways that she loves for quilts. One is blue, and the other is anything in that fall autumnal colorway. So I'm going to go through some of her blue quilts first. This was a fun one where we learned a little bit of a tough lesson. It's a tumbling blocks quilt, really beautiful blues and silvers and whites. And we thought we had done the math properly. We thought we had done the math really well, and we didn't have very many squares. And so when we started to piece it, we realized that we were going to run out of fabric really quickly, and we were going to run out of variety. So we decided to reshape the quilt with skinny borders on the top and bottom and really wide borders on the side to really set off those tumbling blocks in the center. We didn't want to cut up those border pieces to have an overabundance of that particular fabric in the quilt, because that would have looked a little off, we thought. But we thought maybe if we offset the size with the wider borders, that it would be a really interesting effect. And I really like the way that this has come out. I think it's very different. It feels very modern to me, and speaks to a bit of problem solving when you start out with a plan that doesn't always go the way that you think that it will. This next table topper is a stunning piece of work. Mom did this as a class not that long ago, and it is paper pieced. So she's paper pieced all of these intricate starburst shapes, which are absolutely beautiful. And then the batiks and the blues, and I love that I don't know, like that taupey colored blue that goes next to the light blue. It feels like beach sand to me, and I just think that this is like the beach at sunset. It's a really beautiful piece, and she uses this on her dining room table as a table topper when not using it as a dining table, and it looks really, really stunning in her dining room. In the living room, she has this really fun, beautiful collection of a lot of indigos and Japanese inspired prints. Really simple pattern, but really powerful with just those two colors, with the blue and the white. And it really shows off that variety of fabric. So I think these are probably 5-inch squares set with 2.5-inch cornerstones and sashing. And simple can be beautiful. Not every quilt has to be as complex as that paper pieced one we just saw. Some quilts can be just incredibly simple and still beautiful when you have this beautiful element and the beautiful fabrics to show off. So this one, you can probably tell it's been used and washed, and it's a little bit worn around the edges, but that also, I think, contributes to the beauty and the charm of the quilt, because you know that someone loves it and someone uses it. So I love that. The quilt we have behind us for the introduction to the video is this blue and white quilt that I made for Mom. I made it for her 60th birthday in 2009. And it is, again, one of Mom's favorite color combinations. It is essentially a bunch of pieced half square triangles. And if you like this one, I was thinking that I would do up a video and a pattern on this one. This was me also playing around with some leftovers and some pieces that I had. My heritage is Dutch. My dad was born and raised in the Netherlands, and so this always reminds me of the Delft blue pattern and the China pattern from the Netherlands, and it's something that Mom's always loved as well. So that's another reason why we really love these blues. You can see up close in some of the pictures, just it's a whole bunch of squares. Some of them are half square triangles, some of them are just squares, but when laid out into this really impactful design, I think it just looks spectacular. Another thing I love about this, and it's a nice rediscovery for me because I haven't thought about a border treatment like this in a long time, is that tiny little flanged dark blue edge. I wanted something to frame the center of the quilt and give it a little bit of drama. And this is something that I haven't really revisited in a long time. So it's nice to look through these older projects and get some new inspiration for projects into the future. Moving now into some of Mom's really second favorite, first favorite, second favorite colorway, and it's that autumnal, the browns and the oranges and the dark greens and the forest, and she loves that color combination. And this project is some of the best quality flannel I have ever seen in my life. These are thickly woven, low pile, but dense and soft and all flannel. And again, a super simple design, but the quality of the fabric and the charm in the design of the pattern and the prints, it's a beautiful, beautiful project. It came together quite easily. Setting those simple squares on point makes it look a little bit more complex, and it's a beautiful, cozy quilt. Really love this one. Mom also did this wacky log cabin with the star insets quite a few years ago, and I'll have to double check with her whether she paper pieced it or used some templates. I'm not sure how she made this one, so we'll have to double check with Mom on that. It's the greens and oranges that she just loves, and it's a great project. And another building on that same theme, this is full of falling leaves and pumpkins and oranges. It's a complex pattern. I remember working on this with Mom. Lots of little pieces, lots of half square triangles, lots of futzing around, to be honest, to try to get all those seams to match and line up. But the way that those colors chain through the black background is so dramatic. And I think it's a really good lesson that you don't always need white or beige or cream as your background. Sometimes that black can be just so impactful. Love this one as well because it really shows off those oranges and greens that Mom loves.
And again, building on that theme, here is another quilt that Mom has done just in the last few years that just really just blows me away. It is another course that she did on ruler work and how to use rulers in your quilting. And so these squares, it's a quilt as you go design. And so each of these squares is quilted individually. And Mum has used the rulers to create these various panels in the quilt. So the front looks really good, but it's the back that I really want to spend some time and attention on. It's the back where you can see all of her ruler work that the course taught her how to do. And I just think it's an excellent, excellent effort and an excellent project. She did a beautiful job on it. There's some really, really funky designs here, and it clearly took a lot of time and effort to map it all out so that things would line up properly, and then we put it together as a quilt as you go project. I helped her with some of the final finishing elements to it, but Mum did all of this ruler work as part of a class that she took, and I think it turned out really beautifully. I always look at the back of this one more than I spend time looking at the front of it. And the last two quilts I want to show you are things that Mum has made and are kind of sitting in the ready to be gifted pile. And it shows that she's a viewer of my channel. So Mum has made a couple of Hills and Valleys quilts. I think there are two of them here or three of them, three of them here. So she's a viewer of the channel. This is the Hills and Valleys quilt. There's a free pattern for this on my website at www.bitsandpiecesquilting.com. These are all Christmas fabrics. So, like I did when I first made this project for the channel, Mum has taken a bunch of her Christmas fabrics and put them together into this really, really cheerful design. There's two or three of them here, I think. There's three of them in total, waiting just for that perfect person who needs a Christmas pick me up. So, perhaps this year these will find new homes. And finally, Mum also saw my planning a trip around the world quilt and made this really cute baby quilt out of some leftover flannel fabrics. And so it's a great simple design, a trip around the world planned out using some of the blue leftovers because Mum loves her blue. So this one is also just waiting for a new home.
Thanks very much for watching this trunk show of Mum's quilts. It's quite the collection. Do you think there's enough, or do you think we still need more quilts?
Well, we can always make more, and I think aren't we doing one this afternoon?
We yes. I think we've all decided that there's never enough quilts. There's always a need for more quilts. So we will continue to make them. Hope you've enjoyed this trunk show. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to make the most of your fabric bits and pieces.